The show which talks about all the various major football leagues in detail. Today, we are going to continue theme of interviews, and we have Mr. Phil Moss here. So, who is a very experienced manager and is a well-known name in Australia. And so, without wasting much time, I'd like to first thank Phil. Like to take out time from his busy schedule and come and talk to us. And thank you, Phil, for doing that. And and like I don't know, like it's very difficult for everyone, like with the pandemic going on, even from football fraternity, it's been very difficult. Yes, like maybe the online shows are a way to get about stuff, but how has it been for you? Like because you are a coach and you have to have day-to-day contact generally, and suddenly coming here, how is it?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks very much for having me on the show. It's a real pleasure to spend this time with you and your listeners. And it's always great to have an opportunity to talk about football and coaching and leadership. Look, I'm very much a positive thinker, a glass half full, if you like, with everything. So I just see incredible opportunity that the pandemic has thrown before us, and that's to connect on a much wider scale. We've been able to pivot a lot of things technologically onto Zoom and the virtual world, and I think that helps really. Probably accelerate our learning because there's so many more things we can do virtually now to learn as leaders and coaches. So, I'd like to think that most coaches, we haven't been able to control the pandemic. So most coaches would have controlled the controllables and used the time wisely to continue to educate, connect, and obviously stay connected to their players as well. But it's just great that sport has been able to, in the majority, get back on the pitch to some form, and football's been leading the way. And while there's games that are being played around the world, particularly in the high profile leagues, that's something for the kids to look up to and aspire to.
Definitely. And like you mentioned on a very important point, like although now we might say, okay, fans are not allowed in the stadium, and like the game probably is missing out. Do you think, like, in a way, because of the pandemic, people had to be fast tracked into using platforms like Zoom, Skype, or any other online, like video calling, chatting platform? Do you think that has brought the football community much more closer worldwide than probably it would have been?
Yeah, I definitely do. Absolutely. And I know it has definitely in Australia, through Football Coaches Australia. We've really been able to form a coaching community amongst the professional coaches at this stage, and we're looking to broaden that to include community coaches at some point. But we've been having, during the pandemic last year when there was no sport able to be played, and training sessions couldn't even be performed. We had virtually weekly meetings amongst our coaches on Zoom, shared ideas, connected with the governing body. The lines of communication were much better than they've ever been, and I really do feel that I'm a big believer on coaching courses, for example. I've got more value, and this is no discredit to the content of coaching courses, but the real value in coaching courses for me is the time you spend with the other coaches at meal times and after hours, when you can sit in the common room and swap ideas, and you realize that coaching is a very unique profession, and we have very unique stakeholders that we have to manage, and it's an all-encompassing job that you just never switch off from. So being able to spend that time on coaching courses together off the pitch, we all love the on-pitch stuff, but off the pitch as well, swapping those ideas and networking is very powerful, and we've been able to transfer that to the virtual world during the pandemic as well.
Like I've heard this about networking being a very powerful tool. Do you think like this is like kind of the most important aspect in terms of a coach? Because even if you can have, like, if you are the best coach in the world, you still need to have a good set of network to probably even get a player. Do you think networking is as key as maybe having the talent to coach?
Look, I think first and foremost, you have to want to and love working with players and people, and improving players and people around you to be a coach. But once you've ticked that box and that you know that that's what makes you tick and that you've got a talent for it and an eye for it and a passion for it, then networking absolutely becomes crucial. Because not only um, from the point of view of learning different styles of football and different methodologies of coaching and different leadership styles, and taking on board what will work for you and leaving at the door what won't work for you. But I also think it's really important to have mentors and colleagues, particularly who you're not coaching against. So you might not be in the same league as them at the time that you're working, but to have them to sound as a sounding board and to swap ideas with and issues and work through them together. I think that's absolutely crucial, because coaching, as we all know, is a very can be a very lonely world at times, particularly if the team's not going so well. So just to have that sounding board and that network of support around you, I think is absolutely crucial to your success.
Definitely. And I'll go probably a little bit more personal with you. And it's like, when did you? What is your first memory of football like that pulled you towards it?
Oh, look, and it's a photo famously in our family, famously captured by my father of before I could even walk. I was sitting there with my little bandy bow legs and in the backyard, and there was a football in front of me, and there was this glint in my eye as I looked at the football. Really, probably too young to even know what it was consciously, but subconsciously it was being etched in the back of my brain. And just the look in my eye when I was looking at the football probably says everything about the way my life's gone and how passionate I am about the game and the people involved in the game, and what a unique opportunity it is to make a difference to people's lives. And I'm not just talking about the players and the staff that you work with. I'm talking about the supporters who support the club that you're working for at the time, and what a difference it can make to their week, their month, their year. When you're playing a good brand of football, it's a winning brand of football. You're developing players. You're giving them an opportunity to make a life, for themselves and their family they might not otherwise have had in a different industry. So, there's so much that goes into that round thing that we call a football. But at its very core, it's a round ball that you can spend time with in any environment and enjoy yourself. And we should never lose sight of that.
Definitely. And like since you were your coach recently, more than a player playing was quite a while back. You moved from playing into coaching, and was that something you always planned, or was it? How did that happen?
Well, I had a bit of a backwards career, really, because I started off as a sports journalist out of school, and I wanted to be a professional player, always wanted to be a professional player. But I had a few injuries around the sort of 17, 18, 19 mark that sort of, held me back, and I ended up not becoming a professional player until I was a bit older, at 26, 27. So it took me longer to get to where I wanted to be. But I always, in the back of my mind, always wanted to be a coach. And I started coaching quite early on. I was 26, I think, when I coached my first local team, and it was just a local Premier League team in the Manly Warringah area in Sydney, where I live. And that was while I was playing semi-professionally, still trying to make it as a professional. And I just felt that I felt I always had to work, 3 times as hard as the next player to make it as a player, which I achieved, and I was very proud of that, to play professionally in Australia. But I just felt coaching and leadership always came naturally to me. I was always a captain of most of the teams that I played in, or a vice captain. I always became a bit of an on-field coach as I got older. So yeah, it was a very natural transition for me to move into to coaching from playing when the leagues started to get a bit slower.
Definitely. One thing I generally do not see personally is like for you, you were the coach, and then you with central coach managed, you were the head coach, first assistant, then you moved to head, and again you moved as a assistant to Sydney FC. Like, you don't see that transition back again once you have managed for quite a while. Was it an easy decision, or what was it?
Yeah, it was because I'm not one for titles so much. It's I have to, and I've always said this. I've never had a job. I take roles, and it's because I'm passionate about the role. So, when I was coaching at Manly in the state league in Australia, I was the head coach of the first grade, but I was also the technical director for the whole association and the junior pathway. So I was really passionate about that role. It was my local club. Then I got an opportunity to be Graham Arnold's assistant with the Australian Olympic team, the under-23 team in 2006 when we were qualifying for the Beijing Olympics. Really passionate about that role. And then, from the state league, back in the state league, I got the opportunity to go to the Mariners with Graham again, and was his assistant, stepped up into the first team role, and then took a couple of years out of football coaching and worked quite heavily in the media. As a coach on TV, a pundit, analysing games for Fox Sports and Big Sports Breakfast over here in Sydney and Australia. So some TV stuff and some radio stuff. And then the opportunity came up to work with Graham again, and we've been close friends, but also we work very well together. And he offered me the opportunity to come in at Sydney and join himself, Steve Corica, Andrew Clark, John Crawley, guys that I worked with at the Mariners, and I've known Steve Corica for a long time as well. So, I always look at everything as a role. So whether it's head coach, assistant coach, as long as it's a role that I'm passionate about, and I feel like I can make a difference, I don't really care if it's head coach or assistant coach. So that's it. It wasn't hard to step back from being a head coach to an assistant again, as long as you're around the right people and you're clear on what your role and your responsibilities are.
Definitely. And you were out of the game with maybe punditry work after you left Central Coast Mariners. Do you think that helped it, like for you to go back to assistant, maybe probably instead of like directly going after your Central Coast Mariner job?
Probably on two counts, actually, and it's a good point that you make. It did give me a bit of time to breathe, and it probably allowed the transition to go back to being an assistant a bit easier. But also the work I did in television and radio, it really sharpens your eye around analysis because you're constantly watching games on TV or you're at the ground commentating, and you've really got to pick games apart and teams apart with how they're playing and what they're doing, and that sharpens your eye for going back to being an assistant where you're doing a lot of video analysis and providing game plans and analysis to the boss to deliver to the team. So it was a really good period, those couple of years. I was fighting a court case with the Mariners at the time, so there was it was a bittersweet period, but really enjoyed the media work that I did, and that period of time really is what got me so passionate about Football Coaches Australia and helping to set up an organisation that supports coaches while they're in jobs and while they're out of jobs as well.
Definitely. And you are also involved with various media work right now also. Like I keep seeing your posts and stuff when you put up, I think. And which one do you prefer? Is media work better than coaching?
Media.
Yeah.
Look, they both. I'm passionate about both of them. As I said, right out of school, I was a sports journalist. So for the Manly Daily newspaper, and I've always been involved in either print, radio, or television media to some degree. So always been passionate about that. But coaching, when you played the game, the nearest thing to that is when you can't play anymore, is to step into the technical area and be a coach. And the media and the corporate world that I work in now with NAB, the bank, it can never replicate the adrenaline that you feel, when you're coaching a football team or out there playing. So, I really miss that. It's probably the most natural drug there is known to mankind, and really enjoy it. I enjoy the pressure that coaching brings with it. I relish game day. A lot of coaches prefer the training week and spending time with the players every day on the training track, and I love that too. But the adrenaline and the pressure that and the edge that game day brings, I really miss that when I'm not coaching.
Definitely. And I think we have a very unique intersection of skill sets, like you did journalism, media, so it helps you in media work, and plus you are a coach and a player, so I think your analysis comes out even more better, like you basically know everything, like of all the genre. So like I'll go back to coaching part, and when you stepped up from maybe the assistant to the head coach, how big of a step is that?
It's a great question. It's not an easy challenge. It's a great challenge, but it's not easy because as an assistant coach, you're sort of the conduit between the head coach and the dressing room. So you sort of become a bit closer to the players than you probably would if you were the head coach. And you've got to know where the line's drawn between, making sure you've got the trust of the players and they know that they can talk to you without certain things getting to the head coach, but you've also got to be loyal to the head coach and make sure that he knows what's happening in the dressing room so they can manage what they need to manage to get the results on the weekend and keep themselves and their staff in a job. So making that step up, I definitely felt a shift in the players' attitude towards me, and not that it was any more or less respect. It was just a different. It was the line had shifted a little bit on what they'd talk to you about and how they were around you, because you become the chief decision maker. So ultimately, you've got their livelihood in the palm of your hand, with whether you select them for the weekend or not, whether you re-sign them to another contract or not. So it certainly it naturally shifts a little bit, but I tried to stay, whether I was assistant coach or head coach, the same person. Ultimately, you can't try and be someone that you're not. And as I said, I'm not a huge one for hierarchy or hierarchical titles and things like that. I prefer, to be collaborative, but also for players to know that ultimately, and my staff to know that when you're the boss, the final decision rests with you, and it's on your head because you're the one that has to front the board and front the owner and front the media, and explain what's going on. So, yeah, really enjoyed that challenge. Everyone said, never take over from a high-profile manager and never take over after you've just won the grand final, and never take over at the club that you've been the assistant at. Well, I did all three of them, taking over from Graham, and we just won the grand final for the first time in the Mariners' history, and obviously I was the assistant at that club. But no regrets whatsoever. Unfortunately, I fell out with the owner, after a season and a half, and we went our separate ways. But certainly no regrets.
Definitely. So I'll ask you final few questions before we wrap up, and like the one of them is like, as a coach, like you would have some certain way of playing, and like for young coaches, they do not know because everyone they speak to probably they already have some way of playing. How do you develop that, or how long, or what is the best way to develop your style?
Look, I think you've got to know in your own mind and your heart what you stand for, and when you put a team out in the park, what do you want that team to look like? So, what's the identity that you want your team to be known for? I was a defender as a player, so naturally, when I transitioned into coaching, I found myself thinking about defence first, attack second. So, make sure your defensive structure's solid, that you're hard to beat, because that sets the platform to go and win games. And look, I've had, I was coached by John Cosmina, who was a famous striker for the Socceroos, and had a wonderful career in the old National Soccer League, and spent some time at Arsenal as well in England. And even though he was absolutely an attack-minded player, he still focused a lot on defence and defensive structure and making sure you knew your job without the ball, to go on and win games. So, I think all coaches need to sit down before they actually step on the training pitch for day one of their job and think, what do I want to, what do I stand for? How do I want my team to look? Obviously, who's employed me? What do they want? Is it a club-centred model of playing, or is it an individual centred model? And I think the best clubs, have a club identity, so it outlasts any individual. So I could be coach one day, and it could be Graham Arnold the next, or Ange Postecoglou the year after that. it doesn't matter. It's got an identity, and each coach will bring their own skill set to that. But ultimately, if you look at Manchester United, for example, under Sir Alex Ferguson, Jose Mourinho and his style of football probably was never going to suit the Manchester United way of playing, because it's much more defensive minded and counter-attack football, whereas Sir Alex was very much, whatever it takes to win the game, we're going to go and do that. So yeah, interesting question, interesting styles. Nothing is right, nothing is wrong, but I just know to sustain a career, you've really got to know in yourself first and foremost what you stand for and what you want your team to look like when it takes the field.
Definitely. So we have two more questions before we wrap up, and the first of the two is: do you have any particular game that stands out the most in your mind? Like for good or the bad reason, anything.
There's two. For good is when I was the assistant to Graham Arnold when we won the grand final. For the Central Coast Mariners, first win in 4 attempts for the smallest club in Australia, and to finally win that and everything that went with it. For everyone who had spent time at the Mariners, not just us in the 3 years, I was there for 5, Arnie was there for 3 and a bit. But it was everyone who'd set the club up in the beginning to who was there watching that day, and part of it. So that was definitely a big one. The other one that really stands out for me was when I was Graham's assistant for the Australian Olympic team, and we had to go to North Korea and get a point to get through to the Beijing Olympics. And that experience, going to a country like North Korea with everything on the line, it was the last game of the qualifying campaign. We knew what we needed to get. It was a cultural experience like I've never experienced, nor the players or coaching staff had. And we got the job done. And Graham had to make and I was his assistant, so we discussed it early on, but we had to make a really decisive tactical change early in the game because we were being overrun. They were getting in behind us, the North Koreans, and we had to change personnel and change the system. And Graham took the decision to do that in the first, I think it was the 23rd or 24th minute of the game, which was massive for me because it just showed that, a lot of people will tell you that coaches do all their work from Monday to Friday and game day is for the players. But this was a coach at the very top of his game, who made a really big decision in a massive game to qualify for the Olympics. And if he hadn't made that decision, we wouldn't have gone to Beijing. There's no doubt in my mind we would have lost that game and it would have been all over. So, the power of being decisive as a coach on game day really resonated with me that day and taught me a very valuable lesson.
Definitely, definitely. And so we'll wrap it up with one final question. This may be very familiar question. Do you have any advice that you can give to a young coach who's just starting out?
Yeah, I think just be clear and look. This is I've heard Ange Postecoglou say this as well, but it's something that I passionately believe in as well. You've got to know why you want to coach before you step into that role. Don't coach just because it feels like the next thing to do, or people have said you would be a good coach, so try it. You've really got to know why you want to coach. To make sure that you're setting yourself up for success and you've got the right tools to be successful. Because if you don't know within yourself, you might have a good season, you might have a good couple of seasons, but you won't last the length of time. And, I'm not physically coaching at the moment, but I'm coaching executive leaders at a big corporation. And that's a pointy end of coaching in the corporate world. I'm dealing with some really serious, intelligent, experienced leaders where you've really got to be on your game every day. And that's the same with football. If you go into the professional ranks, you're dealing in a high pressure, high stakes, high quality environment every day. So if you're not ready for that and you don't know why you're there, you won't feel comfortable in your skin, which will make it very, very difficult to not only survive but thrive. And if you don't thrive in coaching, then you're not going to last very long, because at the professional level, it's very results driven.
Definitely, definitely. And you like on that note, Phil, thank you so much for talking to me, and I wish you all the best, and hope to see you back on the field coaching some club soon. And hope to talk to you again soon. Till then, take care, stay safe, bye.